Oh, okay, I can see we're live. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Joint Committee of One Adoption West Yorkshire. I'm Councillor Fiona Venna and I chair the meeting. I'm the Executive Board Member for Children and Families at Leeds, and I'm going to ask the other members to introduce themselves now. Adrian, please.
Thanks very much, Fiona. I'm Councillor Adrian Farley. I'm the lead member for Children and Families on Bradford Council.
Thank you. Richard, please. Councillor Foster, sorry.
I'm Councillor Richard Foster. I'm Deputy Portfolio Holder for Children and Young People in Wakefield.
Thank you. Councillor Kendrick, please.
Hello, I'm Viv Kendrick. I'm a Councillor and Cabinet Member for Children and Young People in Kirklees.
Thank you. Julie Jenkins, please.
Hello everyone, I'm Julie Jenkins, Director of Children's Services and Young People in Calderdale. I'm here because I chair the management board that reports to yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Julie Longworth, please.
Good afternoon everybody, I'm Julie Longworth and I'm Deputy Director of Children and Families with Leeds City Council.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jo Hall, Head of One Adoption West Yorkshire.
Thank you. There's a lot of people here with the same name on the call today. John Grieve, please.
Afternoon, everyone. John Grieve, Governance Services, and I'll be clerking today's meeting.
Thank you. And John Duxbury, please.
Good afternoon, John Duxbury. I'm doing the webcasting today.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to have a slight interruption, which is a bit embarrassing when this is being streamed live, but I look after my neighbour's dog on a Tuesday morning and she'll come and get him at about 1:30, so I'll have to go on mute and off camera for a minute because there'll be a barking, handing over dog scenario, so I'm sorry about that, but it will only be a minute. Okay, if we could start the formal items of the meeting, please. So are there any appeals?
Under item 1, there are no appeals against the inspection of documents.
Thank you.
Under agenda item 2, declarations of disclosable pecuniary, wrong number. Under agenda item 2, exempt information and possible exclusion of the press and public. I am not aware of any items where we need to exclude the press and public. Under agenda item 3, I've got no indication of any late items. Under agenda item 4, declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest. Could I ask members if they've got any interest to declare?
No.
No, I can see no indications. Apologies for absence, Chair. Councillor Wilkinson, who we've mentioned previously.
Thank you. Okay, so the next agenda item is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was on the 28th of July. This is on page 7. So we'll take matters arising and matters of correction at the same time. So is there anything on page 7? Anything on page 8? Anything on page 9? Page 10? And page 11 is just the date and time of the next meeting. Are we happy to accept those minutes as an accurate record of the meeting?
Yep.
Councillor Venna,
yeah.
Sorry, I just couldn't get to my page quick enough. But just on page 8, at paragraph 7, where it said a matter arising, it was actually from the previous minute. It was regarding Calderdale Council. It said it was considered by the executive board in Calderdale, and the last few words is just not quite right. It says thereby aligning with other local authorities. It actually should read aligning with the proposed regional framework. Subtle difference.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So if we could make that amendment, please, John.
Will, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got 2 main reports for today, and the first one is the Head of Service report, which is covering the service since October. So it's the quarterly report. So Sarah, do you just want to draw out highlights and then we'll open it up for questions and comments?
Yes, that's fine, Councillor Venna. I just thought just a few key points. I think probably the first thing to say is that obviously people have continued to work really, really well during the pandemic. And I think towards the end of the year, like a lot of places across the region, staff were quite tired and morale was quite low. And I think we all felt really positive about coming into the new year. And I just think it's obviously been impacted in terms of the whole school situation about, key workers and children going into school. So I think the teams have been working really hard, and it's just been brilliant the way that they've managed to continue going really in this sort of difficult set of circumstances. We have been impacted more this time than last time in terms of staff off sick, and we've also had quite a number of new staff appointed during this period of time. But they're all working really, really hard. Just in other terms of staffing, the multidisciplinary team, just really pleased to see that we've got some people in post now. We've got the early years practitioner in, and we've managed to progress with Leeds Community Health Trust. We've got interviews set up for the psychologist, and we've appointed a speech therapist and occupational therapist. So that's really positive. Just in terms of an update around the financial support in adoption, that we've been trying to look at a regional approach. We have got agreement now from Calderdale and Leeds, and we're just looking at the work being progressed through the cabinets of the other 3 local authorities. So I'm happy to take any questions on that if people have got issues to raise around that. And similarly with the special guardianship work, it's taken quite a long time to progress this work. It's very complicated work, and it clearly has different implications for different local authorities. And I know that each local authority have been taking legal advice and looking at their own set of circumstances. But work is progressing slowly but surely. We are making progress around that. Just worth mentioning around the new financial assessment tool that we've been working on. We have done quite a lot of testing across the 5 local authorities, and the local authorities have been very positive. It's much more straightforward to use. It takes into account the recent changes around welfare benefits, particularly universal credits. And further testing is being carried out in the next couple of months, just to look at any impact around existing arrangements in light of costs, processes and timescales. We did have a meeting with the Department of Education last week and the Department of Works and Pensions to look specifically at the issue of the child element of universal credit, because the regulations are very clear that you can't duplicate state benefits, but actually it's very complicated to take into account the child element of universal credit. And I think it's fair to say that we didn't make that much progress with the Department of Works and Pensions and the DFE, and they very much left it to us to continue to pursue those particular issues, which we're doing, which is quite complicated, but we're progressing with that. I guess one of the key issues around special guardianship work in particular is about each local authority's ability to undertake welfare benefits checks on behalf of carers. This is something that carers themselves felt would be really helpful. And I know certainly in Kirklees and Leeds, they've got very clear systems and people in place to do that. I think in other authorities, they don't have that. So we've been looking at the contract that we have with Grandparents Plus, just to see whether we can explore with them for them to do that on behalf of the other 3 local authorities as part of the contract. And we're just looking at some of those issues around that. But we will need some more local decisions on all of the issues to do with the special guardianship work. The special guardianship work with Grandparents Plus is going really well. We've reached our target of 120 families, which has been really helpful. We were able to expand that because of some funding from the government around the Adoption Support Fund COVID-19 funds. We've also commissioned some training for staff around non-violence resistance for the kinship teams across the 5 local authorities. That happened last week. Some local authorities took up more spaces than others, but we were able to use all of the spaces, which was great. And we've commissioned some services for special guardians around teenagers, working with teenagers, and also a therapeutic parenting programme. So definitely an increase in the take-up of the Adoption Support Fund regionally with the work that Rian's been doing across the region. In terms of performance, we're just slightly out of sync with the performance report. It's due in early February, but when I come to talk about the half-yearly report later on in the meeting, we can have a bit more of a discussion about the up-to-date sort of performance, if that's okay. Just with regards to family finding, I'm pleased to say that we have placed 127 children since the start of April, which, given the difficulties that we've had around the pandemic, has been really positive. We continue to have a lot of pressure around the recruitment and assessment of adopters. We've got a lot of people coming forward. We met with the board in the autumn to talk about the pressure of the number of people coming in. We've taken on some additional staff. We've got sessional workers in post, and we've had agreement from the board to invest in 3 additional social workers for the next financial year, so that we can make sure that we can support those adopters as they come through their recruitment and assessment process. We have got a new website. If members want to have a look at that outside of this meeting, I'd be really, really grateful for some feedback from you, just to let me know what you think about it. One Adoption South Yorkshire has now gone live. They went live on the 1st of January, so they've now joined the One Adoption brand, and that seems to be going okay. It's very early days for them, but they are now on the website. And then just in terms of adoption support, obviously we've been doing quite a lot of work online. And I think the webinars and the very short, sharp sort of informations, coffee and chats have been very, very well received. We just started to go back to meeting with people in terms of stay and play groups with bubbles and managing that safely. But we've had to go back down to kind of virtual work since the beginning of January. And just in terms of forward planning, just at section 5 of the report, just to mention that we have done an evaluation of the last 3-year plan, because we are coming up to the end of that period, which is due to expire at the end of March, and we have drafted another 3-year plan on Appendix 1. That's at page 25 to page 34. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions about that, but very keen to hear your views about the 3-year plan that we've got, that we're looking to start in April. We have consulted with adopters, we've consulted with young people through the Adopteens group, and we've consulted with staff, so very keen to get input from the local authorities as well. And then last but not least, just in terms of the budget for this year, we are projecting a very slight overspend at this time of the year of around 25,000. We are aiming to balance that by the end of the year. So that's positive. And the budget for 21-22, we are implementing the new revised funding formula, which is based on activity and placement orders. And as I say, the management board have agreed for 3 additional social work posts to be agreed over and above the budget for 1 year, to see if that makes a difference in terms of the numbers of people we have coming through. So that's a whistle-stop tour of my head of service report, Councillor Venna, and I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the report? Yes, Viv. Sorry, Councillor Kendrick.
I don't mind Viv or Councillor Kendrick. Really going back to early on in the report, I know there are quite a number of staff who are off sick and others who are anxious about the new variant. I just wondered how much access the officers have to vaccination, if any, you know, because that is really quite important for people working in this field.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Kendrick, for raising that. Actually, we have been in discussion with Leeds as the host local authority around the vaccines, and we have a number of people identified that are in, we've categorised them into group 1, 2 and 3. We've got a number of people who are in group 1, a number of people who are in group 2, and actually we've just gone to our staff this week, and all those people in group 1 have now been invited to have the vaccine. So those people who are doing things like adoption support support, who are going out to see families, and the people where there's children and you can't easily social distance, whereas some of the social workers are in group 2 because they can manage it a bit more, particularly those who are meeting with adults. They can actually do more of that safe sort of social distancing. So, but yes, thank you. We have been included in the Leeds rollout of the vaccine.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Foster. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Just one comment from our service director when we were discussing the report in advance of today, just to actually comment how well we think things are working now. The number of adoptions that have gone through this year so far have exceeded our expectations. And I understand we've got a significant number that has children placed pending adoption. So I think, you know, we have to say well done under these extremely difficult circumstances, because we do appreciate how hard it's been for staff to actually achieve this. So well done. And if you pass our thanks on to your team, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Foster.
Thank
I
you.
will do.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fowley.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah, thanks very much for the work. Thanks very much for the report. Just a question really around how the pandemic's impacted on the most vulnerable people within our district. I'm mindful that, especially across Bradford, we have a very diverse sort of community, and the pandemic's disproportionately affected people in different groups. And I just wonder how you've been able to sort of adapt to that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've tried to do within our service is really focus on the people who are the most vulnerable. And we've tried to target some of our resources to those families that we know are really struggling. And it's been really interesting about how people have been impacted on the pandemic. So some adoptive families have said, actually, things have been better in lockdown because our children are close to us, and actually the attachments have had an opportunity to be built up and we feel much closer. And so things have gone quite well. Whereas other people, the children and young people, often feel quite out of control and have become more challenging. So we've seen that particularly teenagers, it's been quite a lot of issues around that. And we've been working really closely with the local authorities around the safeguarding of those vulnerable young people and trying to do everything that we can to try and prevent those arrangements from disrupting and keeping that family together. So we've tried to divert some of our resources around some of that to make sure that we target the more vulnerable people in our sort of cohort.
Any other questions or comments? Sarah, I'll just make a comment and ask a question if that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, my phone's just going to ring at this precise moment. Okay, so I think it's really positive. It's my landline, so I can't switch it off. I think it's really positive that we've had an increase in interest in both adoption and fostering over the pandemic, which I don't think has been replicated elsewhere in the country, but we have definitely had an increased interest in both, which is fantastic. And I've been asked to do a number of media pieces around that, which has been really great in terms of promoting that more people are interested, but also encouraging more people to come forward. I suppose the question I had was, I was wondering if you could say a bit more about staff morale and staff wellbeing. It's something I've been very mindful of through my briefings that I have weekly with Julie. We've talked about this a lot. And also Sal, our DCS, and I we used to do an in-person tour of all our social work offices, and now we're doing it on Zoom. So most weeks we're meeting with groups of social workers from our various services. And I think it is really apparent that people are struggling more as time goes on. And Julie told me about some really interesting research last year that I think you'd read, Julie, about disasters around the world, like, you know, pandemics or conflict or natural disasters. And apparently it's quite usual for people to hit the wall after 6 months, because for the first period of time you're running on adrenaline. So I think within our whole directorate we've been very mindful that staff are struggling, and probably struggling more the further we go into this. So I was just wondering if you could say a bit more about your team and
Yes.
how we're supporting them.
Yes, of course, Councillor Venna. I think what's been really helpful is that the managers within One Adoption have just been really proactive about trying to make sure that staff within their teams are really well supported. So we've had buddying arrangements for people who are living alone. We've created some WhatsApp groups for people to make sure that they've got that connectivity. The teams have booked in coffee and chats time during the week so that actually they just have an opportunity just to catch up, because I think what people are missing is when you're in an office, you can go over and have a chat with somebody, can't you, when you're on a break, and you can just go and have that networking opportunity, and I think people are really, really missing that. So we've tried to build in sort of coffee and chats in each of the teams. I think when we did our all staff event in November, people really liked the opportunity to reflect on some areas of their practice rather than the day-to-day, if you like, grind of everyday work, and just like the opportunity to come out of their day-to-day work and have some time for reflection. And we built in some networking opportunities during that day so that they could meet up with other staff that they don't normally see. We've also got access to all of the support services around Leeds as a host local authority, and there's been a whole raft of information that's been available for people on emotional wellbeing, different classes that people can join, and different arrangements, individual counselling if people need that. And we've basically made sure that people feel it's okay to take an hour out of the day to go and have a walk, to get some fresh air, to make the most of the sunlight, because what we were finding was that people felt, because they're working virtually, they felt this inclination to just work and work and work and work, and we were saying, look, it's really important for you to take some time. And I think if we can support our staff, then obviously they feel more able to do the work. And honestly, they've just gone over and above and beyond the amount that's really expected of people, and they are working really hard. And I think it's just really important that we support them as much as we can. I think just this last week, I go around all of the teams. So I make a point of going to their team meeting, and I'm just doing another round of that this month. And I've been to probably about 5 or 6 of the team meetings already. And it's interesting because some of them are doing quite well, whereas some of them aren't. And I think where the managers are coping well, their team are generally coping better. But I think where we're seeing managers who are struggling, we're really trying to invest time into them to try and make sure that they're supported as well. But it's something that we're perennially, if anybody's got any ideas or suggestions, we're really keen to hear from people as well.
Can I come back specifically on the point about managers, Sarah? I was going to ask this question before you referred to whether managers are coping or not.
Yeah.
My sense from going around the teams with Sal, which I have to say isn't as good virtually as face-to-face, but then life's not as good as it is as generally at the moment. My sense from the meetings that Sal and I are having is that frontline managers are potentially struggling the most, because in the sense that one of the things that was discussed in one of the meetings we went to was that usually if social workers come back from a difficult visit or they have a difficult call, they can chat to each other. And because they haven't got that peer support in the office, they're ringing their managers more. Things that they could sort out at a peer level are going to those frontline managers. So I've sort of picked up that's the group that in some ways we've got the biggest additional burden at the moment. So I just wondered if you could say a bit more about that group and if there's some specific support for them.
Yes, I think that's a really insightful picture, actually, because I think that's what I would replicate that. I think that's very much the same. And I think what we've done in teams is we've tried to buddy up in terms of pair people up, social worker with a more experienced social worker, so that they can have the permission to have that peer-to-peer checking out of things, so that the managers aren't having to do that kind of regular kind of feedback. That's not to say that they don't want to, of course they want to. We also have introduced a weekly check-in. So I do a weekly check-in with all of the managers. We have about an hour every week where we just do a go round with people, see how people are feeling, just checking out with them if there's any particular issues. And they've been invited to meet together as a peer group and to arrange their own kind of social support with each other within the work time, of course. So those are probably the areas that we've been doing. And some of the teams we've introduced clinical supervision, because what we're finding is that as people are working more from home and you're dealing with trauma all the time, people are dealing with that secondary trauma in their own homes, and it's very, very difficult for people. So we've arranged some clinical supervision with an outside facilitator so that they can have a look at getting some additional support about, you know, what are some of their issues, what are some of the family's issues, and is there a bit of a blurred boundary in some of them. So I think that's been quite helpful for some of the teams to have that clinical supervision.
Councillor Venna, I'd just like to say as well that one of the things that we have introduced is actual formal wellbeing conversations. So although we have lots of informal conversations, you know, regularly, daily, weekly, there's something about people having an opportunity to have a formal wellbeing discussion, you know, on an individual confidential level. And again, I suppose it's for us not to make assumptions that people are okay, and to have that formal discussion which is recorded and which can respond if there are real individual needs. But I think the one thing that we've probably all learned throughout the pandemic, is the need for communication, because things can change from the morning to the afternoon, you know, based on, you know, the experience that our managers have that particular morning on the day, or what's going on in their personal lives. So there's got to be just that ongoing communication, and us listening and trying to be as responsive as we can to ideas that you know, that the workforce is suggesting themselves.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on that point, or anything else on the report? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the half-yearly report. So again, Sarah, do you want to make any introductory comments, and then we'll open it up?
Yes, of course, Councillor Venna. So this is very much, it kind of seems strange now hearing this in January when it refers to the work between April and September, but it is the last data that we've got in terms of performance report. So you'll notice that Appendix 2 and 3 that I have attached the performance information for the first 2 quarters of this year. And I guess my highlight from that is just looking particularly at the number of matches that we've made and the number of children that have been placed. And as you can see, from Q1 to Q2, the number of children has really significantly increased. And I think it's really interesting because there's something about the pandemic and the first lockdown that actually meant that social workers in the local authorities were more available. Family finders had a bit more time available because they weren't travelling as much. And actually they were able to make quite a lot of matches. And so we've seen a very big increase in the second quarter of this year of the number of children that have been matched and placed across the region. And I think there's something about the way that we're working in the kind of, particularly the first lockdown, I would probably say again now, is that there's something about being more available. And so actually we don't want to lose that when we move forward. That there are some things that do work well virtually, so some of those linking meetings, some of the discussions you have with social workers, some of that family finding activity we can do quite well virtually. So I think that's quite important to say. One of our significant issues has been around the medical advisors and the actual undertaking of GP medicals, and of course we're now seeing that at the moment, particularly with this particular lockdown, that GPs aren't as available to do the medical advisor reports. And I know it's been a significant issue, not just here, but across the country. And so the numbers of people coming through to be approved still remaining fairly high, but they're just taking a bit longer to get through because those medical reports are taking a bit more time. You will see from the half-yearly report that I included an appendix around the multidisciplinary team and the work that has gone on in the first 6 months of this year. So again, if people have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer the questions around that. I'm not sure that there's much else that I want to pick out. I'm just more than happy to answer any questions, Councillor Venna, that people might have.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No. Oh, I'm just going to have to go off camera for a second. I'm really sorry about this.
I think probably just to say that the work that we've been doing around family finding and the profiling events has been really positive over this last 6 to 9 months, and we are seeing quite a lot of matches. You wouldn't imagine doing information events, would you, profiling children across Zoom and across these kind of virtual arrangements, but actually it's gone down very well, and we've been able to show videos of individual children. Clearly, we put a lot of safeguards in place to make sure that we know who's at the meeting, and the fact that they are approved adopters. But we are seeing a number of children being matched in that arena, which I think is really positive, because we haven't been able to do the activity days which we would normally do face to face with families. So I think that's been really, really positive.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No, it's a very thorough, interesting report. Thank you. Is that the last item on the agenda?
Yes, we just had the 2 items today.
That seems. I thought when I had my chair's briefing, actually, it seemed quite a brief agenda today. When would we be due to meet again?
It would be about July time, I think, John, wasn't it? We were looking at
July, Chair. We've not selected a date as yet, but we can notify members in due course.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any other business? Okay, well, in that case, we've all gained an hour and a half. So we will end the meeting and see you all again in July. And thank you for all your contributions, and thank you for the work that your team are doing in this extraordinary situation, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Venna.